Hello everyone, I would like to thank you again for joining me for this episode of Misadventures in Travel. I think this is going to be the last episode of Misadventures in Travel. I have racked my brain and I think I've exhausted all of the misadventure stories that I can remember from my past travels. Now, I may make future Misadventures in Travel videos if something comes up in my future travels. So if that happens, I'll make another video about it. But this is going to be the last one of this series from my past travels. Okay, so in this video, I am going to tell you about the time that we ran out of gas in the middle of nowhere. Okay, this trip was a big road trip, and it was my dad and me and my cousin Trisha. I mentioned my cousin Trisha in an earlier video. She was with me. She's traveled with us quite a bit, and she was with me on the one about the train crash. Okay, this was later than that. This was, I think it was later than that. It was around the same time. I don't know the year. It was like sometime in the mid to late 90s. Okay. And we were going on a big road trip, and it was, I think it was winter. January maybe? It's an odd time to travel. It might have been that long break I had from school. I don't know. I don't know why we were traveling when we were. But we were driving out west, and we were driving through Minnesota, through South Dakota, and we went to like Wyoming. Did we go to Montana? Maybe Montana, Colorado, Utah. I don't know. I don't remember this trip that well. Yeah, I don't really remember it very well. We stopped and visited my aunt and uncle and my cousins that lived in Rapid City, South Dakota. Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, it was all driving. All three of us could drive, so we would take turns driving. The vehicle that we had was my dad's. It was the white one. It was a Chevy, some kind of SUV that was really popular around that time. And I remember that particular car. Maybe it wasn't the same one. He had two of them. He had a green one and a white one, and I can't remember which one he had first. And I don't know if it was just this particular type of vehicle, but you know how when you get really, really low on gas, usually you'll get that little warning light, like fuel low or something will come on, and you'll still have, depending on the car, maybe 20 to 100 miles more that you could make it before you actually run out of gas, okay? Well, this particular car did not have that benefit. When that light came on, the gas was gone. So by the time the light came on, you were basically already stopped. You had no warning whatsoever. I mean, other than obviously the needle had gone down to E, and you probably should have filled it up before then. But once that light came on, engine's done. You're done. So, and it happened, this is the only time, one other time that car ran out of gas when I was driving it, but I was right downtown in my town, and I stopped, I got out, I had my oldest son with me at that point, he was a baby, and I was like trying to figure out like, oh, am I gonna have to walk home? It wasn't too far from where we lived, and one of my friends happened to drive by and gave us a ride home. And I can't remember how we went back and filled up the car, but whatever. But this time, we were in western Minnesota, okay? Western Minnesota is very, very flat. And western Minnesota has basically nothing in it, okay? I'm talking southwestern Minnesota. So, you're on the interstate, you're going a long ways, there's maybe a tiny town every once in a while. We're heading towards South Dakota here, folks. So there's a whole lot of nothing. And it must have been a Sunday. I think it was a Sunday, and it was the first day of our trip. And we were listening to the Packer game. When you live in Wisconsin, you're a fan of the Green Bay Packers. There's a few Vikings fans, but every once in a while there's a Bears fan. But for the most part, people in Wisconsin are Packers fans. And we were listening to the Packers game on the radio, and we were driving along, and Trisha was driving. at this particular moment. And I remember, and we are in the middle of nothing, and it's cold. And I don't think there was a lot of snow though. So that actually makes me think, I wonder if it was spring break. And as I've mentioned, spring break isn't really spring here, it's still winter, but I feel like there was just like a dusting of snow. There wasn't like big heaping piles of snow, I think. So anyway, we're driving along and all of a sudden she says, "Is that gas gauge right?" And the car stopped. And so we're like, oh shoot. So we ran out of gas. She managed to pull over. And then we had this ridiculous discussion because we were having this whole complicated dilemma about who was going to go and who was going to stay. And in hindsight, I'm thinking, why does anybody need to stay with the car? You get out, you lock it, it's not going anywhere. I don't know why. And it was my dad. It was my dad who didn't want to leave the car. And like leave the car by itself. It was apparently okay to leave me by myself, as we've heard, but leaving the car by itself was not acceptable. So anyway, I don't know if he thought somebody was going to steal our luggage or the car or what. But anyway, he didn't want to leave the car by itself. But he apparently thought it was perfectly fine for either me or my cousin, who were these young women in their like early 20s, to have to go by ourselves to find gas. I don't know what he was thinking. But anyway, we decided that obviously it wasn't really the safest idea for one of us girls to hitchhike to a gas station. So he decided he would stay with the car and we would go and find gas, which I'm still kind of like, everything about this is dumb. But that's what we did. So anyway, Trisha and I get out of the car. My dad stays in the car. You know what? Now that I think about it, I think he just wanted to listen to the Packer game. Would he still be able to do that with just the electricity of the battery? Probably. I don't know. But anyway, again, this is before cell phones. Not long before. We started to get cell phones shortly after this, but we didn't have any phones at that time. I don't think. Maybe we did. But what good would it have done us? I don't think my dad had AAA or anything. I have AAA, which I've used quite a few times actually. But I don't think he did. And we were not anywhere close to anyone we knew that anybody could come and help us. So, and you know, I mean, it's just gas. It's not like your car broke down or something. So we got out and we flagged down a car, which was quite a rarity actually on this highway on this particular day. There was not much traffic at all. Like it was like every 10 minutes a car went by. And thankfully, it was just a regular sedan, and it was a nice older couple like in their 60s. And they were very nice, and we said, "Could you give us a ride, please, to the next gas station?" And they said, "Oh, sure." And so we got in, and they were a very pleasant couple, and it was probably like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 miles to the next exit that had a gas station at it. And they drove us there and they dropped us off. Okay. And they went on their way. Now, we had to buy one of the red gas containers. So we had to buy that first. And then we went and filled it up. And now we had a problem because we had to get back to the car. So, and I'm sure my dad hadn't thought this through, but we're like, okay, we're going to have to find a ride back to the car. And so, we went outside the gas station and we were kind of watching for people that were going that direction, you know, that were coming on the highway, the opposite of the way we had come, so that we knew that they were going to go past that way. And we asked a few people, and I know a number of people just said no because they didn't have any room for us, which kind of makes the fact that we took two of us sort of, you know, disadvantageous because they had to have room in their vehicle for two people, not just one. So we were asking a few people, and a couple of people just were like, kind of like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, they were nervous or whatever about us. And I mean, we were perfectly ordinary people, but whatever. And finally, this guy approached us because he had heard us asking people. And he was a guy like in his late 20s, early 30s. And I will be honest, he looked a little rough, okay? He was tattooed, leather jacket, you know, by some people's definition might look a little scary. Okay, I wasn't worried. I was like, whatever. My cousin Trisha was a little more nervous. And he said, you need a ride back to your car? And we're like, yeah. And he goes, oh, I can give you a ride. I'm going that way. That's no problem. And we're like, okay, thanks. And he but I think my cousin looked nervous. And actually I think we both were a little bit. We're getting in a car with a strange man. You know, that wasn't ideal. We would have liked to have gotten in with a family or, you know, somebody with kids or something, because it just felt a little safer. And I think he kind of sensed that we were anxious about this. So this was very generous of him. He said, tell you what, how about I leave my license with the gas station attendant and I'll come back for it after I drop you off. And we're like, wow, thanks, you know, because now the gas station attendant who was listening to this whole conversation knew who we were with and had the guy's ID. And now the guy has to come back here to get his license. So, you know, they'd see how quick he came back and that we weren't with him and whatever. So anyway, we're like, okay, great. So he leaves his license with the gas station attendant. We go and he's in a U-Haul. And I think Trisha was still a little bit hesitant. And he had to like move a couple things that were on the seat. Because, you know, a U-Haul is just the one seat. He had to like gather up some of his stuff that he had because he was traveling by himself. And he had to gather up some of his stuff and put it in the back of the truck so there would be room for us to sit down. And I remember one of the things I saw was he had this is back in cassettes, or maybe it was CDs. I don't know. But he had a Jane's Addiction album. And I'm like, ooh, cool, Jane's Addiction. So, because that was like all about what I was into in high school. So he moved all this stuff. And I think I even said to Trish, oh, look, he's got Jane's Addiction. But he moved the stuff so we could sit down. We get in the truck with him. He was very nice. He starts driving down the highway back towards our car. And, you know, we're curious because he's obviously moving because he's got a U-Haul. And I said, so where are you moving? And he goes, oh, I'm actually moving from Seattle to, it was somewhere in Florida. Miami? It was far. It was like literally as far as you could possibly have to move within the continental United States. And Trish and I were both like, whoa, that is a long way to move by yourself. You know, how long is that going to take? You know, it was a long drive. And we said, why are you moving, you know, from there to there? And he said, I'm transferring prisons. And we're like, what? Now, if we thought about it for a second, obviously a prisoner is not transferring from one prison to the other in a U-Haul, okay? But just the fact that he said that kind of startled us for a minute. He was a prison guard. So we probably couldn't have been in safer hands. He was a prison guard and he was transferring from a federal prison that he worked at in Seattle to a federal prison in Florida for his job. So probably for the weather, I don't know. But anyway, he got us back to our car. We thanked him. We got back in the car with Dad, put the gas in. He had to go, you know, I mean, how far did he have to go around? Because he would have had to go to the next exit east, come back around, go all the way back again, get his license, and then go on his way. So that was really, really nice of him. And, you know, we went back to that same gas station, then filled the car up and went back on our trip. So, yeah, that was a fun story. The lesson from this one, obviously, is don't let your gas tank get empty. And also, probably, if you're going on a very long road trip, it might be a good idea to carry a spare container of gas with you. Or have something like AAA where they will come and fill your gas tank if you run out of gas. So, just a simple lesson on that one, but just to be prepared on a road trip. Okay, guys, so thanks again for joining me for this episode of Misadventures in Travel, and this will be the last one for a while, unless something, fingers crossed, doesn't hopefully go wrong on any of your future travels. And If I think of something to make or post between now and 40 some days from now, I will do that. But otherwise, our next series of videos are going to be videos that I take on our Mariner of the Seas cruise in August. So you can watch for those. And I thank you guys again for joining me today, and have a good day.